I'm going to do this platter in real time, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking. I'm just going to make it. Do we have a cordless drill I can borrow? Or a drill. I'd like to put a hole in this piece.
You got a bit? You need a bit?
I have a bit. You guys are lucky I'm from the West Coast. It's still early there.
Oh, the crap before you fall off? Yeah, but it was really early.
But it was really early when I woke up. Oops. Where's my key for my chuck? I almost got you.
They almost got me, but that's okay.
Yeah, it's on the floor in the shavings. That's where it always ends. I'm gonna put the screw in here.
Okay.
Clamp it down. My carving stand.
You've done enough better than
Oh, hey, while we're talking about it, I have some flyers with my tools and stuff that I have available on them. Take one, pass it around if you'd like one. And find the center on this piece. I'm going to drill myself a pilot hole. And an easy way I can find the center is just to go off a few sides here. This screw is kind of a long screw for this platter length. I don't want to have the screw go too far through this, so I'm going to put a little spacer on there so it doesn't go too deep. I'm going to use the power of the lathe to screw this piece on.
Going the right way.
Yep. This was not wanting to get started though.
Don't use force, get a bigger hammer.
I'm going to do the whole outside of the piece like this. And I'm going to use the tailstock as well.
Oh my God. Oh.
I'm going to grab my bowl gouge again. And we'll go ahead and work on the outside of this platter. And I'm just going to use the left. I use this left hand because look where I'm standing. I'm standing completely out of the way of everything. Well, not everything. Not everything, but a lot of stuff. Anything that decides to fly off of there right now, I'm not going to be exactly in line with it. Right now I'm just trying to remove some material that's around it. how to put a tenon on there. Now I can continue to shape. What I'm going to do is a platter that we can carve a pattern on the outside rim of. It's going to have a little bowl shape down here in the middle. I'm going to get this surface as nice as I can.
Is there any wood with that water?
I'm kidding, it's wet. Looks pretty good. I use my little spindle gouge to just clean that up a touch. Just make a little definition between this little inner bowl and then this outer rim, and then I'll define my tenon a little bit as well. Let's call that good for the outside. Any questions so far?
You could decorate the bottom side of that as well, couldn't you?
I could.
At that point.
At that point, and I could do it later too. The carving I'm going to do, I'm going to be able to do work on the bottom of it too. I don't know who got me this wood, but it's nice wood. I appreciate it. And it was sealed up well too, which is important. You don't want to cut a nice piece of wood and have a crack on it. I'm going to keep the tailstock here just for a little extra support while I work on this rim section. The same as we did with the hollow form, I'm going to leave some extra material in the middle to support this rim while I'm cutting it. So I'm not going to get that middle all taken care of before the rim is. Get the rim taken care of and then work with the middle. Take a look at that, looking good. You'll notice that it's a little out of round. It's actually a lot out of round. Not going to matter once I'm done carving it. It's going to warp anyways. Get that outer edge taken care of, and then we'll start working to my inner area. good.
Nice catch.
Yeah. I'm pretty happy with the thickness of that outer rim, and now I can start working on the inside of it. I'm just going to waste away some of this material here first off. And then I'll probably get rid of the tailstock. Right about now. Tool rest is a smidge low. I'm taking out the inside of a bowl like this. Now it's a smidge high. So I'm just going to take these scooping cuts. Piece is flinging lots of water. Can you guys feel that out there? I switched to a different tool, not because I needed a different tool. The one I was using was not as sharp as it used to be. This is the same grind, just in a smaller diameter. I think that's good. Tiny little dimple at the bottom I should probably get rid of. That's basically the outside of the platter. Let's carve it up. Yep, thanks. Anybody have a pen or pencil I can borrow? Pen works. That's a nice pen. See if it writes on this green wood okay. So I'm going to carve a pattern on the outside of this that I'm real comfortable. Anybody have a pencil? This one's starting to not write on the wood.
the wet, yeah.
Too wetness. I'll try it. We got a regular pencil coming. That's
Lead pencil.
yeah, we're good.
You give the slow cam. Give the slow.
So what I'm going to do is this sort of a arc pattern on here. And I'll work my way around. And I'm not worried if they're exactly the same. That's what's cool about wood turning to me, is that I don't have to measure much. I had a guy in a workshop just a couple weeks ago, been a woodworker his whole life, but he does a lot of high precision stuff. And he was so happy to be wood turning because he didn't have to measure anything. And that doesn't always come out that perfect. But if it didn't,
Could you come to my house and be my indexing wheel?
if it didn't come out that right, what I would do is I'd erase the last 3 or 4 of them and either shorten them or lengthen them just a little bit to get it to match up pretty close. Because, you know, if you measured each of these, they're not all the same. So if we change the size of those last few, no one would ever notice the difference. It'd be all good. Air saw again. There's the end of the hose. So you don't have to lean over so much. I'm just going to work my way around this vessel. Those of you that are in the class coming up the next few days here, it takes a lot of guts to carve on something if you make a nice platter to then start cutting it up and making a mess of it. But it's a good thing to try. And in a classroom situation is the best time to try it.
I always thought the best time to try it is when you mess up the lip of a rim.
That would help. That would be a good one too. When I was first learning to hollow, I made 3 or 4 hollow forms with limited success. I blew through a few and had a few successes, and I was bound and determined to get it right. So what I did with like the next 3 or 4 hollow forms I did at that point, I got done with them and I cut them right in half on the bandsaw. As soon as I was done with them, I looked at them. I was able to judge and figure out where my wall thickness was thicker than I thought it was and where it was thinner than I thought it was, and I learned a tremendous amount for that. And then I went and did another one and learned from that, and by the time I got like 3 or 4 of them done, I had a better understanding of where I didn't understand how thin or thick it was.
And you can sell them for more.
There you go. You got 2 pieces to sell rather than 1.
Walmart.
When I'm making these cuts, I don't want to go too far that I have a deep mark, and I want to sneak right on the corner so that it's not too ugly.
On the cuts as you make them.
Yeah, I kind of like it to be a little, if it's just square, it looks too plain. I like a little bit of an angle. So after I go around like that, the next tool I'm going to use is the reciprocating carver. I'm not going to use it straight up. I'm going to use it laid over on the side a little bit. I'm just going to carry that design that I created in deeper. Yeah,
Could you have not hollow the center?
I could have just made a,
And then you're kind of no risk.
Yep.
Right?
yeah,
And then come later.
practice.
I guess
Practice.
you can put it right back on the lathe.
Yeah, you could. Although when this is back on the lathe, it's not as friendly the second time around. But yeah, no reason why I couldn't do that. You could just turn a disc to practice the whole carving process on, and do it that way too. Sometimes in in the classes that I teach, some people choose to make a sampler piece where they'll do something like this, but instead of carving the same pattern all the way around, they'll section it into maybe 4 different sections and try 4 different patterns, which they can then take that piece and use it as a sample piece for future pieces. They can say, I like this pattern the best, I think I want to do it on the real thing.
You haven't mentioned it, but when you're using the saw and the carver, being conscious of grain direction, I mean,
You know, you need to be conscious of it, but
it's
you
not going
can't.
to run away from you.
No, you can't let it too much bother you, because we're working in a lot of different directions here, and I've found that this is pretty friendly in a lot of directions, and this is really friendly in all the different directions too. So it may vibrate more, like out this direction here. You don't have as much structural strength as you do in this direction here, so that might be something. And sometimes when you're using the carver, you'll get a piece of grain that just likes to go out, and you got to kind of sneak.
Going, yeah.
Yeah, you got to kind of sneak up on that if you see that happening.
Can you do that with regular chisels or?
Yep, you can. I like the reciprocating carver because I don't have to pay as much attention to the carving process as I do with a regular chisel. It basically just vibrates back and forth, and you can push it through.
Whose carver is that?
This is a Raleigh one. They don't make it any longer. Sometimes you can get it on eBay. The one the 2 companies that I know make them, Proxon is one of them, and another one is Automoc. They're both really nice units. The Automoc one is the nicer of the 2. And you can also, if you have a Fordham, there's an attachment you can plug into your Fordham that creates that reciprocating action. And the cutters that I use on here are the flex cut cutters, and I like those a lot. So after this, I would probably go after it with the sander a little bit. And then I do the same thing on the back side, just the opposite.
If there's just not any pneumatic tools out there, we're just suggesting the pneumatic.
There are, of the reciprocating carver, there are pneumatic versions. They're really expensive though, which is unfortunate. So, just a quick thing, last thing here. Let me cut the foot off of this piece and show you how that's done. My carving stand that I have here is an aluminum version of the real deal. The real deal is steel, but when I travel, I bring this aluminum one. So the real one is much nicer. Just so you know. The way I like to cut the bottom off is probably not on the chuck like this. I would put a piece of wood in the chuck, or I would have a piece of wood on the faceplate that would allow me to jam up against it. But I want to show you this because so many people That's another thing you should do. Every time you set this on there, wipe the bed of the lathe off. You don't want to lay that on the shavings that are on there. Anyway, you can just use a piece of foam. And you can stick it up against the block of wood. Oh, it's just a chuck right here. You bring it up here. See, so many people say, well, I have those big jaws with the little rubber buttons on them, but how can I hold something like this on those? This is it.
Carefully.
And even if I had those cold jaws, I think they're called the cold jaws or something. I used to have those. I don't use them anymore because it's just so convenient to just jam up against something, use my same center hole, and I'm off and running again really quick and easy. If I wanted to have a rounded bottom on this, I could. If I wanted to put a foot on this, I could. Whatever I wanted to do. I think this foot might be a little big, so I can trim it down a little bit. Some light cuts across the bottom here. Start the lathe, make sure it's got a little concavity to it. It does. I didn't do any finishing or anything nice to this piece, sanding wise or trying to get the surface great. I just wanted to show you the concept. Get rid of this little nub. My air saw works great. And then get rid of what's ever left. The sander works great. It works greater if it's dry wood.
Drum.
Clean up the bottom, and then what would I do to that after I was all done? There you go. You guys learned something. This would be a dangerous
Buzzsaw
frisbee.
frisbee, yeah.
Maybe they were large and carves.
That could be cool, Bert. What's that?
Actually, with the wire burners, it was really cool.
Any questions about anything? I appreciate you spending your evening with me, and if you're in the hands-on class, I look forward to seeing you in the next few days. If you're not, and you're interested in some tools that I have, I think you could come on by. Is that okay for them to stop by? And I brought a few, but I'm not going to set them out here tonight. But if you want to stop by Alan's place and visit, that's fine. Thanks for coming.
You say you put another piece inside for the
I do.
smoke?
Yeah, I'm not going to get to that tonight,
Right.
but let me explain the procedure for you. The insert is what I call it, makes it the vessel of illusion is what I call it. And the insert is made out of a different type of wood. Let's say that's a nice mapley looking wood. I would put cherry in that. That would look really well. It would look really good in that particular piece. So the insert is just a piece. If you remember when they had Dickies, you know, the little mock turtle. Yeah, I had a Dickie too, but it's like a mock turtleneck thing. And that's exactly what I got going on in there. It's just a little top part of the vessel that I bend and get and put in there. So let me draw it.
Okay.
It's a little thing that sort of looks like this.
Finally, a use for the funnels.
There you go, it is. And it's fairly thin, it's about a 1/16 of an inch thick. And what I do with it is I make it so that it conforms really well to the outside, or the inside shape of my vessel. So this is the vessel we just turned. We want it to be, so to have the same profile as that vessel that we just turned out there, so we can glue it up in place. It's usually about a 1/2 inch to an inch larger in diameter than the opening. So that is basically, say the opening is 3 inches. We make our insert either 3.5 inches or 4 inches. One's going to leave 1/4 of an inch all the way around. The other's going to leave 1/2 inch all the way around. Does that make sense? And it's usually somewhere in between there that I kind of play with. Depending on the wood, some woods don't bend quite as well. But you don't want to be able to see back in there and see that it's a little insert piece. You want it to see that it's a completely closed effect there.
Do you glue it eventually?
I do.
How do you make that?
A bead of epoxy right in that area. The way I turn it, if I'll take a block of wood, I'll put it between centers, I'll put a tenon on it. Once I get that tenon on it, flip it around, put it in the chuck. It's still a block of wood, but now it's in the chuck. I will go ahead and shape it, the outside to match. That shape on the outside, I don't just guesstimate at it. I use profile gauge, a bunch of metal fingers. I stick it on the outside of my hollow form, and then it can give me the profile of the outside. If my wall thickness is consistent, same profile on the inside. So I would turn this outside portion, and then I would hollow it out a little bit. And then I would take a parting tool and part down through there. Part it off the length. It's still relatively thick and chunky now. Is this all making sense? Then I would turn basically a little mandrel out of this scrap piece. It has a little cone in the center like this. And I'd flip that whole insert piece around and use some double-sided tape there and there to push it back in on the lathe. And then I can turn the backside and thin it out as thin as I need it to be. When we're doing this, we don't want to use an exotic wood. They don't bend well. Domestic hardwoods are the woods that bend well. Ash, maple, cherry, hickory, oak, these are all good bending woods, and ones that I would use. You also don't want to use, you want to use a piece of material that is flat sawn. So you look at the end grain of this board, you want it to look like that, and you want to get your insert out of it like that. What's this?
Quarter sawn.
Quarter sawn. That's not going to work unless you get the insert, unless it's a thick board. Get the insert of it out of it like that. That would work.
So you're trying to follow a growth rate?
Yep. Not necessarily follow, but work in the same direction as the growth rings. Something like this I haven't had good luck with either. Gnarly stuff. Burl, any of that stuff doesn't fit.
Bending this is just squeeze it and stick it in, huh?
I use some wood bending techniques to squeeze it and stick it in. So what I'll do is I'll boil it. Take the insert once it's done and nice and thin. I'll put it in the pot. I'll boil it for anywhere between a half hour, an hour, maybe even longer. The key is it will sink to the bottom of that pot and it will be not floating any longer. That means that piece is completely saturated as it can possibly be in boiling water. I pull it out of there. I find the direction that it bends the best and I pop it and put it in the vessel.
You didn't leave it there for a while. Glue it while it's wet.
And I don't glue it while it's wet. I leave it in the vessel for a little while. some of you probably have seen and know what the last step is too. You got to put a balloon in there to clamp it in place. That clamps it in place and basically molds that little insert piece to the same shape as your outer vessel. And while it dries, then that's kind of like the clamp when you're doing wood bending. It kind of holds it there. And then when it dries, then we can deflate the balloon a little bit, put a bead of glue around the outside, blow it back up again. It's good to go. That simple.